Hello and welcome to episode number 32. This is the season review. We're going to look back over season number 3, see where it all went right, and most importantly and most accurately, where it all went wrong. If we start with a small positive, our League Cup campaign was the best that we've ever had. For the first time ever, we were able to get past that tricky first round stage. We beat Walsall at home 2-0, then got past Bradford with a 1-0 win in extra time before crashing out away at Newcastle United in one of two live comms that ended 5-1 in succession. Biggest highlight of the season, though, was our FA Cup run. Starting with Birmingham away, we then beat Newcastle to gain a little bit of revenge on them. We beat them 4-2. That was probably my game of the season, before going away to Burnley and snatching a snatching a 1-1 draw with Burnley, scoring a late equaliser. And then our result of the season, but not our performance of the season. Result of the season, home to Burnley, we beat them 6-0. Reece Nelson scoring the only hat-trick of the season, before crashing out of the cup with a 2-1 defeat in extra time against Manchester City. And that was 17th of March 2019. That was the last positive in our season. Everything else since then has been fairly poor. It was a league campaign that offered much but ultimately delivered very little. We actually had a poor start with a defeat away at Bournemouth, but we covered to beat Man City. Danny Ings on fire with 3 in the first 2 games before losing against Arsenal. Then we went on a little bit of an unbeaten run, drawing against Tottenham, a game we probably should have won, and then beating West Brom, Huddersfield and Liverpool to put us in a really strong position. Danny Ings absolutely on fire. 8 goals in the first 7 matches for an odd defeat to Stoke, 4-2. They always seem to beat us. Sado Berahino scoring a hat-trick in that one. Then wins against Crystal Palace, draw against Watford before losing again to Manchester United. That Man United game, we were 1-0 up and we let it slip with Rashford scoring 2 goals against us. Then the wheels started to fall off a little bit, but it wasn't entirely obvious that it had happened. We won the next one, and we were unbeaten in the next 2 as well. Then we lost 5-1 to Chelsea. 2 own goals. We really struggled with long throws in that one. It was a horrendous game. We had Izzy Brown sent off very early on, 31 minutes he was sent off, and we couldn't cope with them in that game. And form never truly recovered. We beat Leicester just before Christmas, but we were losing games and conceding goals. A highlight was beating Bournemouth on the start of January 2019. Had a corner been turned then? Of course it didn't. We then lost to Arsenal. Beating Man City gave us a bit of false dawn before the point where our season just fell away completely. 7 defeats out of 8 games. The only highlight being a 0-0 draw against West Bromwich Albion. A very small rally where we drew against West Ham, beat Hull, beat Villa, before we ended with 5 straight defeats. Those 7 points we got against Hull and Villa and West Ham probably just about kept us up. If we hadn't have got those points, it would have been a lot closer finish towards the end of the season. At the moment, the board are satisfied with my management of the team. That's the first time it's dropped that low all season. I've got a lot of work to do in the summer. I think I've got to completely rebuild the squad, but on a limited amount of budget. So what of the players who have contributed to our season? We start with the goalkeepers, as we so often do. Jordan Pickford was our #1 keeper for the majority of the season, playing 37 games. Joe Wildsmith started the season as backup, but he got a little bit annoyed in January because he wanted to move on. I didn't want to let him go. Eventually allowed him to go out on loan. If I hadn't have done that, he would have probably played more games, as Pickford had some really poor performances towards the back end of the season. Average rating of 6.83 for Pickford. Really, he should be doing a lot better now. He's 25, so he is approaching peak form. Him and Wildsmith are going to have a battle for next season. There is a temptation to give Wildsmith the #1 spot, but we'll see how it goes in pre-season. Bettinelli is my 3rd choice keeper. I will probably let him go at the end of the season. I'm trying to gain as much money as I can from moving players on, so he'll be one that I'll look to move on if possible, just to open up the wages. I've got 2 really decent keepers and a couple of kids in Aidan Knott and Martin Evans, so I don't really need Bettinelli. In terms of our left back options, we generally only used a couple of players in this position. Courtney House played there when he wasn't playing at centre back, didn't miss many games. Leighton Baines was the other option as well. He came in from Everton just before the end of the transfer window, so he's had a decent enough season for me. 27 games, 6.93 is an average rating. I am looking to bring in a left back in the window as well. I have one signed, sealed and delivered, but that will be a reveal in the next episode to keep you guys guessing. I've got high hopes of Alan Granger, who is currently out on loan. He came in from Hamilton early last season, in the January of last season, and is currently out on loan at AFC Wimbledon. Quite strong potential ability. He needs some game time, so he's out on loan. I'll probably send him out on loan next season as well. But as I've only probably got 2 seasons left of this save now, I will potentially look to move him into the side in that final season as we move towards FM18 and a new save and a new game. Adam Matthews is going to be let go at the end of the season out of contract, so he will move on, as will Lewis Evans. Ben Gibson, even though he can play left back, didn't feature in that position last season. In terms of right backs, one man stole the show. Kieran Trippier came in August and pretty much played every game he was available for. 32 appearances, 7.03 average rating. Billy Jones started the season but then dropped out of the contention as it went on. Donald Love, who's been part of my squad for the last couple of seasons, didn't play any games and he has agreed a deal with Charlton. And so he'll be leaving the club at the end of the season. I also had John Flanagan at the start of the season, but sold him in January just to bring £12 million in. Centre half wide, I'm relatively pleased with what I've got in terms of options. Ben Gibson had a disappointing season, didn't really get into the side on a full-time basis. 6.79 rating for him. Craig Dawson was signing in August. I didn't have to remember when I signed him. 31 appearances, 7.13 average rating. Courtney House did a decent job, as I previously mentioned. Only 2 goals from my centre backs this season. That shows that we've been fairly poor from corners all season. Alex Pearce, who I brought in as my 5th choice centre back, only figured a couple of times and out of contract and will probably leave as the season draws to a close. Paddy McNair is an interesting one. Centre half, defensive midfielder, only played 5 times, hasn't really been a regular for me over the years, so I may look to cash in on him if I can, though I won't get a huge amount of money for him. In the centre of midfield, it has been a familiar story for who I've been picking. It's mainly been Jack Rodwell and Charlie Adam again. Both of them have had relatively decent seasons. Adam has dropped off considerably from last season where he was player of the year and in the team of the season, but he is now 33, so coming towards the end of his career. Lee Catamol was unhappy at a certain point, but played a few more games towards the end of the season, so I may look to move him on if I can. I have my eyes on an outstanding looking midfielder in Will Hughes if I can get enough money to bring him in. We agreed terms on a deal and on a contract. However, we went under our transfer budget as we got in our left back. So we've had to cancel that deal and I will go in for him again at the end of the season. Harry Arter had a disappointing season, missed the last few months through a knee injury, but didn't really perform when he was available. So I may look to move him on if required as well. I had started to blood in Ross Wade as a young guy towards the end of the season. Potential there, really. Good rating for the senior team. I like his mentals. There's some good numbers in there. Technically, he's not quite good enough yet, but there's certainly a good, solid base for us to start with, and he may get involved. Potentially a loan deal out if I need to next season. I'm hoping that Killian Kelly gets more involved in the team for next season, even though the tactic I'm looking to deploy doesn't really suit him as a attacking midfielder, but you can look to play in the centre midfield. I've had him now for a couple of seasons, and it's now time for him to step up and get into that team on a regular basis. So that is his challenge for next season. Lots of wide players at the club and lots of options for myself. Jack Grealish came in January and did a fairly decent job. He scored a couple of very important goals, just finding his feet, and he'll be a key player for me next season. Duncan Watmore didn't really play much. 15 14 games, 5 substitute appearances. Did all right when he played, but that was down on last season. He's got another year left in his contract, so probably a squad player. He's very restricted. He can only really play as a attacking right winger, not as a normal right winger, not in the centre. So he's not very versatile. So it generally falls out of the side if I'm not sure of what I'm playing. I'll drop him and use someone else. Reece Nelson was probably my star of the season. Came in on loan from Arsenal, did really, really well, scored 10 goals overall, 7 in the league, average rating of 7.06. Izzy Brown, I fell out of love with him during the season. He had 2 sendings off in quick success, and one of them was against Chelsea, which was an absolutely horrible tackle, and I think he got sent off against Arsenal as well. He was never really able to get back into the side once his suspension ended, but he's got a couple of years left in his contract, and he did perform when he played, so I may forget about that in the summer and bring him into the side for the start of next season. Victor Anichebe was a very decent squad player for me. 13 appearances, 6.65, which doesn't suggest he did that well, but he always seems to be involved in our good performances. Which brings us on to our strikers, and I think we've had a disappointing season overall. Danny Ings started the season on absolute fire, scored 9 goals in the first couple of months, so by mid-October, I think he'd hit double figures. He ended the season with 15, which is just how his second half of the season went. We didn't score enough goals in the second half of the season, and it really shows from the players we've had play. Jason Cummins is another one who's had a disappointing season. 27 games, 3 goals. He was outstanding last season. This season's been fairly poor, but he's only 23 still, so there's lots of development potential for him. All of his numbers look pretty decent, so I'm hopeful there is something there for him. At the moment, he's a decent player for most championship sides, so there is a potential to be a Premier League. He has to step up next season. Jermaine Defoe is going to retire. A squad player for us this season. He started 6 games off the bench 24 times. Did okay, but age really is caught up with him now. And Gary Hooper, who never really be able to get into our side on a regular basis. He's out of contract and he'll be let go at the end of the season. If we look at our squad depth, there are some real positives in there. Crossing, when we do get a cross in, it usually gets completed pretty well. We've got quite a few young youth prospects, even though none of the 3 players listed there I would consider a good young prospect. Shooting, actually, when we do have a shot, we get it on target 47% of the time, which is really, really positive. And we've got decent defence with Pickford and Dawson doing pretty well. But then we look at some of the negatives, and there are a lot of negatives there. We don't work hard enough, which is really disappointing because I filter on work rate and determination as key attributes of getting players in. So that is a disappointment that we don't work hard enough. We're not very good at passing. There's no real leader, and we aren't good at jumping around. We suffer against long balls and through balls from the right side of the pitch, left side of the pitch as well. We basically concede far too many goals, and we're not good enough away from home. I think next season is going to be my make or break season. My fear is we have a poor start to the season. The board are satisfied with me at the moment. If we have a poor start, they may become unsatisfied and I may lose my job. So my saving Sunderland mission will have ultimately failed. Though I have kept them in the league for the past 3 seasons and David Moyes couldn't manage that. So I'm a better manager than Moyes, but that's not really saying a huge amount in the North East for the Sunderland fans. So if you've liked what you've seen, please do leave a like. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. I've been the FM Novice and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.